So we're going to start with a little check-in activity. And so if you're able to, if you feel comfortable to, it would be great to, if you would turn your camera on for this activity. I'm just changing my window so I can see a few of you. Great, I can see a few of your faces. So hopefully this activity will warm up your mind, but also a little bit warm up your body as well, because I'm going to ask you to find something in your physical surroundings that represents a couple of different things and bring them back and show them on the screen. So yeah, hopefully you won't have to go too far to find something that represents these things. We'll do the first one as a little bit of a little test. So in your physical surroundings, can you find something that represents communication? And hold it up to the screen. I'll give you a few seconds. I can see some phones. I can see a keyboard. Oh, wow, a microphone. That's great. So I can't see your names, but I can see somebody's got a nice microphone there. Lots of phones, a pen. Oh, wow, trombone. Martin, amazing. Pen, pencil, excellent. Hang on, let me see if I can see some more people. Not sure how I can. Great, thank you very much. Okay, so the second one, I'd like you to find something that represents responsibility. A little bit hard, I can see some pondering faces. We've got keys, a set of keys. Oh, a calendar, nice. The computer, I can't quite see what you're holding up there, Martin. Oh, a picture of kids, a watch, a book, dogs. Oh, cat. Ah, oh, nice to see all those things. Okay. And then the last one, can you go and find something that represents how you are feeling at the moment, or how you're feeling today? Let's see, a rainbow, coffee. A mask. Paracetamol. Great. If you feel, I didn't do it myself. Hang on. If you, I'll try and find something in a second. But if any of you feel like sharing, then feel free to unmute yourself and share why you've chosen the thing that you've chosen and are holding up now.
I chose a tape measure because I'm feeling really stretched today.
I've chosen vitamin D because it's 4 p.m. here and it's dark already, and that's too soon.
Thank you.
I chose chocolate because it's been a long 2 days and I felt like I needed a little reward at the end of the day.
Nice, thank you.
I chose a set of Russian dolls, which is a bit weird. But I feel like every time I open a box, there's about 3 more things I need to do inside it. One of those weeks.
I've got a turtle because I'm slowly going over the midweek hump.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing those things and for going and finding things and holding them up to the screen. I hear that, or I see and I hear that there's also lots of other things going on in your lives around this course. So yeah, thanks again for spending time attending this session. And we often do a check-in to help people to kind of connect with how they're feeling, but also to help us to bring our whole selves into a session or a meeting and realize that we've all got other things going on in our lives and in our days, and that there's space to bring those things into the work that we're doing and into the sessions that we attend. So hopefully you all feel able to bring some of that, and thanks for sharing what you've shared. Great. So I will now give a little introduction to LearnJam before talking about the toolkit, and then handing over to Katie, who's going to introduce some activities. So I'm aware that the light above my head is maybe a little bit in the way of my own head, but not a huge amount I can do. There we go. So LearnJam, we help learning organizations to perform better and to fulfill their purpose. Over the last year, we've been on a journey to becoming a more purpose-driven organization, and to thinking about the impact that we want to have in the world through the work that we do. We hear a lot of people talk about the education system or education systems being broken, but actually we think that they are working well, but set up to pursue the wrong things, such as economic growth or accumulation of wealth, and that they are often or inherently inequitable, and in many cases don't take into account people's circumstances, whether that be gender, race, social background, disability. And ultimately, therefore, these systems of education that we work within don't serve what humans actually need. And we believe that education systems should be shifted and repurposed so that they are in pursuit of equity, of human health, and of ecological sustainability. So we are here to create or to contribute to creating a better world by making learning more purposeful, more inclusive, and more effective. And we do that by helping organizations to perform better and to fulfill their purpose, and in some cases to help them define what that purpose is and how to better pursue it. What do we mean by better? This is a kind of evolving and emerging set of descriptors here, but effective, so based on evidence and research about how people actually learn, inclusive of all learners, equitable, so informed by the actual lived experience of learners who are engaging in that learning, innovative, so embracing new ideas and new ways of working and thinking about things, emergent, so evolving and responding to change, learning as we go, being aware that we are learning in this process as we work through it, and anticipatory, so trying to be a step ahead rather than being reactive to change, being able to anticipate that and see what's coming and what we think should be coming. So what makes us different as an organization? So there's three key things. Firstly, informed by research. Some of you may know about our evidence-informed learning design principles. These inform all of our learning design work. Inclusivity and being inclusive of all learners is a big part. Last year, we did a major project funded by Innovate UK, looking at inclusive learning design. And at the end, in the resources we share, there are some resources from that project as well. And then thirdly, bringing in systems thinking and a holistic approach. So acknowledging that education systems are complex and that we need to consider things as a whole rather than just zooming in on one specific area. So what do we actually do? So that we design and we build learning experiences, and we work as well to improve and or to define and improve learning design processes that are used to create those learning experiences. And we also changed the way that organizations operate outside of that learning function, so that other wider functions of the organization and how they connect with learning and ultimately impact the learning experiences that are created. This can be represented in this diagram. So in the center, you can see the learning products themselves, and then the learning systems that create them, the work systems outside of that, and then all framed within the idea of finding and fulfilling purpose. For us, the Ascend Toolkit project has been a really impactful experience. We always described our work at LearnJam as being learner-centered. We had a kind of learner-centered methodology, but this doing the Ascend project helped us to see that we weren't really thinking about the needs of all learners. We were thinking about the majority, and in fact were excluding some learners. So this was a real sort of a really eye-opening project for us, and a catalyst to a lot of other changes and a lot of other work that we've done over the last year. And so a lot of the inclusivity work that we've gone on to do and the way that we operate now as an organization was kind of triggered by this project, and also the people that we've connected with through doing this project. So what is the Ascend Toolkit? The intention of the project was to reduce much of the stress, or to contribute to reducing much of the stress and the negative emotions experienced by learners with SEN, with special educational needs, and to do that by helping teachers to better identify and then cater for special educational needs. This screenshot that you can see is from the live website, and that's the output of the project. Again, that will be shared in the resources section, and we'll look at that throughout the session today as well. A little bit about the project itself. So it was Erasmus funded, so an EU Erasmus funded project running over 2 years, obviously alongside lots of other things as well, and kind of impacted by COVID quite significantly, but it was the full project length was 2 years. With 7 partner organizations from around the EU, from 5 different countries around Europe. I'll share the names of those in a second. The aim, as I said, is helping teachers to better understand and cater for special educational needs. We focused on mainstream secondary education, as we felt that this was the area where there was most impact from our work. We also wanted to focus on practical tools and ideas that teachers could use. So not being overly theoretical, bringing in theory where needed, but prioritizing and preferencing practical tools and ideas that can be implemented by teachers and people working in education. And yeah, we wanted it to be relevant to teachers, but also anybody involved in learning design, involved in education, involved in policy, and working with young people. We also wanted it to have as wide a reach as possible within the EU. So the toolkit was made available, or is available, in 4 languages, so Romanian, Serbian, Spanish, and English, reflecting the different languages in the partner organizations. A little bit about the process we went through. So we started with the why, like, why is this really important? What are our core values as a group of organizations? Why do we think it's important to work in this area? And we'll look at this, the manifesto that we created in the next activity. We then went on to define a syllabus, thinking about all of the different things that teachers or educators need to understand about special educational needs. And we created 20 modules of content and sets of pathways through that content that would then help people to focus in on the specific area that was most relevant or important to them. We then translated and created those different modules in 4 languages, as I said. And finally, there's a training component that was developed to help teachers or practitioners to disseminate this information within their school or within their center, so that it could be more impactful for more people. This is a screenshot of the digital learning course. This is the first 6 modules. We'll look at some of these modules today. These are the partner organisations, as I said. So the project was led by York Associates, and Martin, who you'll hear from, works with York Associates. And then the other 6 organisations, including ourselves, contributed to writing content, editing content, working on the manifesto and so on. So where are we now? The project is set to finish at the end of November, which is in fact today. So this is the last day of the project. The toolkit is live, as I said. It's in the public domain. It's freely available for people to use, to share, to remix, and that's one of the reasons for having this session today, that we want to share this with people so that it can be used more widely. We're also aware that these resources are not perfect. They're in need of ongoing iteration. And so we would love your feedback. So any thoughts that you have, any on the tools themselves or how they might be used, would be really useful to us. And yeah, our intention really is that this project can have as much positive impact as possible for learners and teachers, both within the EU and beyond. So that is an introduction to LearnJam and to the project, and hopefully that's given you a little bit of framing for the work that we're going to do in the session today. I will now stop sharing and hand over to Katie, who will introduce the first activity we'll do, looking at some of these resources that we can use.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so nice to see so many people here today, lots of familiar faces and lots of new faces as well. Yeah, so I'm going to introduce the next activity today. Yeah, I'm Joe's colleague. I work at LearnJam, and I also had the privilege of working with him and some of our other team members on the SEND Toolkit, as well as part of the LearnJam team. So as Joe mentioned, one of the fundamental pieces of work that we did on the SEND Toolkit was to look at the core values that we want to underpin our actions as educators, which we put down in what we called a SEND Toolkit manifesto. So as Joe mentioned, we started with the why, and then we created this manifesto as a call to action to guide ourselves through the project. In the manifesto, we had 5 core values, which I'd like to share with you today, but we thought that instead of me just rambling on about them, I'd give everybody the opportunity to engage with them instead, and kind of reflect on whether you see these core values currently being lived in your organization. So for this activity, we're going to use a tool that we love. I use it in my personal life, my professional life, called Mural. So hopefully everybody here is, well, if you're not familiar with Mural, then you'll get to know it very soon. So yeah, it's one of our favorite tools that we use to collaborate online, brainstorm, and really be able to work visually together. So in just a minute, I'm going to share a link for everybody to jump in and access the Mural board. You'll be working in breakout rooms, and Mural is easier to use on a computer screen. But if anyone in your group doesn't have, is working from a phone, or for whatever reason, maybe you can try and share your screen yourself, and so that they can see it, or just read aloud what's on the screen for them to be able to see. So a couple of notes before we jump into the Mural board. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you all see the board? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this Mural board is really big. It's one of the biggest I've ever made. And so what you might need to know, just a couple of notes, is how to zoom in and out and how to navigate. So I've put something up here in the top. I'll zoom right in. So I've got a couple of tips here. So down the bottom right-hand corner, you can select your zoom settings, which is just, I don't know if you can see my mouse actually, or whether you can just see, yeah. So on the bottom right-hand corner, select your zoom settings and select trackpad or mouse mode. And then you can go, zoom in and out, depending on which one you're using. And then, move around. And then during this session, we'll be using Post-it notes or virtual Post-it notes to collect our ideas. So these Post-it notes, to add them, you can just go anywhere on the board and double click like this. So before now I think if Laura, if you don't mind sharing the Mural link for us all to jump in, I'll give everybody just a minute to join. select your username and have a quick look before I share the first activity. Oh, cool. I can see everybody jumping in. And if anybody is having any issues accessing the mural or using it, then please just make a note in the chat and we'll try and troubleshoot for you. All right, I can see what about 29 people? Okay. All right, I'm going to summon everybody to watch me. So yeah, I'm going to put you into a breakout room in a minute. So we're going to do a short matching activity, which is going to help us get to know the SEN Toolkit Manifesto, which I mentioned has 5 core values, which you'll be able to see down the side here. So together with your group, if you match the manifesto headline, which is the post-it note in blue, with the statements in white, to see if you can align the core values of the manifesto with the principles that they represent. And I'll give you about 10 minutes to do this activity. And during this time, if you can then, after you've completed the matching, do a short reflection task with your group and say, which of these values do you see in your organization? And are there any more that you would like to see? Great, so I think Laura's going to put the instructions just in the chat so we have them as well. You can also see them up here in this yellow space here. So we'll put you into breakout rooms. As you're entering the breakout room, you'll see a number that's flashing up on your screen. If you could navigate to that space. So if you're in breakout room 3, you'll be in group 3, breakout room 4, group 4. All right, I'll release everybody to go and find a space. Oopsie. All right, ready for breakout rooms when you're, you can see Lauren's got the busiest job. Thanks. See you back in about 10 minutes.
It mimics the experiences of sensory and cognitive overload that many people with autism suffer, and that many people with autism experience, and which our environments cause suffering from. And so this feeling of sensory and cognitive overload can create a feeling of trauma to begin with. Now I'm just going to ask you to look at something. I want you to look at these cards again. And now you're looking at these cards for the second time. I want you to ask whether they are actually quite as calming as they felt the first time round. Now, between 60 and 65% of people who are asked this question will respond, no, they're not. They're not as calming the second time I see them after a traumatic experience. And what this shows is that even those things which we believe can be calming, even those things we believe can be relaxing, might actually not be calming and not relaxing if we have created, or we're part of a structure that creates sensory or cognitive overload, or the kind of trauma that neurodivergent students go through every single day. And what we need to do is we need to understand these systems, we need to understand these structures, we need to understand the environments we're creating. Why is this? Because most of the time, what we also don't realize is rates of, for instance, bullying of neurodivergent students. Let me show you this. This is a map, a world map of bullying, believe it or not. And you can map your own country levels of, this isn't just bullying, by the way, this is levels of long-term bullying. So levels of bullying that goes on over weeks or months or school terms or years. The green is the least bullied, the dark red is the most bullied. In Europe, where the SEND Toolkit was created, we go from, generally speaking, sort of the lowest to the highest. So we go from 5% to 35%, but the most common is round about the 15 to 25% range. So 15 to 25% of students in the European Union record, or in Europe, report being bullied on a regular basis. Now, what's really interesting is in America, there was research done to suggest that people with dyslexia are 4 times as likely to be bullied than people without dyslexia. I don't have the statistic here, but we've also got statistics to say that autistic children report being bullied more than 75% of the time. So if you're autistic, the chances are you will be bullied at least 75% more than if you're not autistic. There is also studies saying in general, children with disabilities or learning differences, such as dyslexia or autism, are at least 3 times more likely, or up to 3 times more likely to be bullied than other children. This means in countries where the rates of bullying, like in Britain, are between 20 and 25%, if you're dyslexic or autistic, the chances of you being bullied are up to 75%. And this is huge. This is really, really big, and it has real world impacts. And let me just show you 1 or 2 of these real world impacts. I'm only going to concentrate on dyslexic children at the moment, because if I concentrated on the others, it would probably blow your minds. 82% of dyslexic children try to hide their difficulties at school. 52% of dyslexic children try to avoid school. The inability to read shares the same levels of shame as incest, it has been discovered. If you're dyslexic, you're twice as likely to become homeless. 50% of those in drug and alcohol rehabilitation are dyslexic. 63% of dyslexics have criminal convictions by the time they're 24 years old. 85% had attempted self-harm, and shockingly, there is a 42% raised chance of suicide if you're dyslexic. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. However I do this, I'm trying to, there we go. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. The reason we do this, the reason we're doing the SEND Toolkit is it's not simply another project that helps teachers. This can actually save children's lives. I'm serious about this. If you look at the statistics on homelessness, self-harm and suicide, this can help save children's lives. And for those kids whose lives literally are not in danger, it can help save their lives at school. This child who asked me if secondary school going to be as bad as primary school, it breaks your heart, because unless the school has structures in place and it has knowledge in place and it has teachers who are there who actually sympathize and empathize, then it's very difficult to say, no, it'll be a lot better. It's really difficult to do that. And so the SEND Toolkit is there to help people, and it's there to help you understand how we can reach them and to actually, hopefully, try to give them a life they can enjoy at school. Because when people say school days are the best days of your lives, maybe for some people they're not, and maybe we can help that. Thank you very much. That's all I want to say.
Thanks so much, Martin. It's always very inspiring to hear you talk about this topic. You know, I think you really speak to the importance of the project and how important it is to come to events like this and raise our awareness of how we can reach more learners and create more inclusive learning experiences. So we're going to have a short 5-minute break. And then when we come back, the toolkit that we've been mentioning so many times throughout this last hour, we'll go into breakout rooms and have a short session to dive in and experience the toolkit for ourselves. So I'll see everybody back here in 7 minutes past the hour. Okay, so for the next activity, we're going to dive in and experience the toolkit for ourselves. So in this activity, we'll put you back into breakout rooms to take a look through some of the SEND Toolkit modules. So we mentioned that there are 20 modules in total, And for this activity, we've chosen a range of modules from the toolkit to work through in your groups. So some teams will be looking at dyslexia, and we have others that will be looking at intersectionality or practical tools for ASD. So a module itself is made up of 7 sections, but today in your groups, you're just going to focus on and look at the first 2, which is the introduction and the case study. So I'll just share my screen again to have a look at the board. So yeah, we now have another section on the board available. So it will be the same as before. So we'll put you into a breakout room, and the room will correspond to a group number. So if you're in a breakout room 8, you'll be in group 8. To access the module, what you need to do is to double click on it here, and then it should open in a new screen for you. And as I mentioned, yeah, you'll have access to the entire module, but we'll just be looking at the first 2. So for today, we'll put you into groups, and if you look at the introduction and the case study sections together, and then reflect and answer the questions, what did you learn and what is the impact of doing this task? You can make some notes next to the module just down here in the post-it notes, and we'll be asking people just for a couple of comments when they come back in. So yeah, just once again, if you're joining from your phone, then let your group know, and you can help each other by reading aloud or sharing screen. Okay, I might just double check. So maybe again in the chat, we could have the link to the mural board and then also the instructions, and we'll put everybody into the breakout rooms. Thanks. Yeah, welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your breakout rooms, and you had a chance to read through the modules and discuss together. So we've got a bit of time left now. I think it'd be nice to hear some reflections from some of the rooms. There were almost 2 groups that looked at every module, so maybe we could go around the different modules, and you can share anything that you learned or what you felt was the impact of going through that module and that topic. Yeah, feel free just to unmute yourself and share as we go. So maybe we can start by having a look at the groups that were looking at the world of Sen. So I think that was group 1 and group 6. So actually, is there anybody from either of those groups who would be able to give a really brief summary of what this module was about? The world of Sen, module 1.
Yes, I can. I think. So yeah, we looked at module 1, the world of Sen, and it's about the core issues surrounding Sen and how a teacher might apply them to themselves, and the nature of the content that we looked at was very much about getting you to think about Sen more broadly. So not only a sort of a list of specific needs, but to think about Sen in a general sense, and it did so in a way that it was immediately very personalized. So the introduction, rather than lots of information, was a personalization activity, and getting you the teacher to think about how your experiences of Sen and what you think about your own experiences of Sen, and what you want other people to think about your abilities with regards to Sen as well. It was a very immersive activity. There's a lot of self-reflection in the activities that we looked at in the case study, and we felt it used storytelling in a very powerful way. And the case study we felt did it was from the point of view of an adult remembering their experiences with special educational needs as a child, and so it was quite interesting because it was this perspective of, if you like, of the child communicating as an adult how it really felt to them. So as a teacher, you're sort of hearing it from a child if they had been able to communicate what they would like to have communicated. We thought that was a very good use of perspective. I think that's a lot of what we discussed. If anyone else wants to jump in and correct me.
Yeah, I think you summarized it really nicely, and we were really discussing the storytelling bit a lot, how storytelling is such a powerful tool to create empathy, and how maybe this could also be used within the context more that people share more personally, and that will create more empathy to create that room to share.
I quite like, I mean, everybody is more than welcome. We actually invite you to go through the modules after yourselves after the call, but there's quite a powerful technique in this module of using the first person narrative of a lot of learner voices, which I think really helps sort of build that empathy when you're a teacher and you might not hear those voices saying these things. Thanks so much. Let's hear from the next group. So there's the next module was called Why Sen is Complicated. And that was module, groups 2, and then also group 7. So would anybody from group 2 or group 7 be able to give us a brief summary of what that module was about and anything you learned? You're in group 2?
Okay, I'll go ahead. It began with a couple of checklists around why it was complicated for both teacher and student. Perhaps how the teacher feels when they feel ill-equipped to respond to SEN needs, and how the child feels in a classroom that's disabling for them. And then we went through a case study that was around 2 teachers who were having a discussion. One was complaining about a child that was running around and being undisciplined, and the other teacher was trying to say, how is the child? And the other one was concerned that she was concerned about the child and not every other child in the class that was being disrupted. And so we went through, and the reflection questions that were given were around the use of negative language and how that would feel for the child, and what commonly do you see children that respond teachers that respond in that sort of negative exclusionary way, or do you see teachers trying to empathize more, and why that might be? We were thinking perhaps around things like teacher training, lack of resource, anyone around that can support them, lack of experience. I forget where else we went at the end of that. It's a bit late in the day for me. But anyone else feel free to add on there.
Thanks, Lulu. I agree. There's a lot in this module, especially in the beginning, about the exclusionary language that can quite come out as a bit of a default when we're talking about SEN. And it's I think that this case study exhibits that quite powerfully of pulling all of those negative phrases out and just seeing how much just happens in everyday life, and kind of raising awareness around that, around how the language we use can frame the way that we think about things. Well, let's move on to a couple more to go through. So we had group 3 as a big topic, intersectionality in SEN. So I think that was from group 3, and then also group 8. Anybody from group 3 or group 8 like to give a brief summary of your module?
I think there wasn't a group 8, so
Oh,
Onus is on you, group 3.
group 3.
I can say
wanna
something
speak
from
to
group
it,
3.
Cheers,
Oh,
Ross.
Ross, please. Thank you.
Okay, so our module is one that comes later. I think it's module 11, and it talks about intersectionality. So the previous modules look in more detail about ADHD, dyslexia, or other cases of neurodiversity, but this talks about how they interact with other factors that need to be taken into consideration by teachers. So, excuse me, so that's things like socioeconomic situation, culture, and gender as well. So how these things interact. And we talked about the fact that a SEN program in a school can't be a one-size-fits-all operation because of all the intersectionality that is important in every single individual case of SEN. So that's really what the module was about, and it gave us some examples of that. And we spent quite a lot of time looking at the beginning of the case study. So I'm kind of tempted to finish and going back and reading and seeing what it said. But one thing that struck us is in the 2 case studies that we looked at, there was an individual teacher who helped these particular students, presumably because this teacher had a handle on an understanding of the particular intersectionality that affected that individual. So yeah, really big topic, really interesting, and yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Thanks, Roz. Anyone else from the group, anything to share?
Just one very quick thing. One of the members of the group pointed out, and I think we all kind of felt it, that it's very difficult to feel people's marginalization unless you can connect with your own sense of marginalization. And so I think it's really interesting and useful to be able to try to find that ladder or that bridge into empathy. And I think that's quite a powerful takeaway.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, I also think this, like one of the points of this module about feeling, there's something about how natural it is to feel discomfort when faced with these, and how a lot of this it does challenge our own biases, and how like we have to lean into that and realize that this is going to be an uncomfortable situation at the beginning. I think we have 2 more groups. We're about 10 minutes left. We've got one on understanding ASD 2. So that was groups 4 and group 9. Would anybody from 4 or 9 like to share a summary and any takeaways?
I can talk for group 4. I've been volunteered.
Thanks, Sally.
So ours was, what was the title? So I'm just looking. The title was Understanding ASD 2. So ASD is autistic spectrum disorder. So it starts off with a quiz, which had some questions that kind of challenge your assumptions, maybe about autism, and also as well as challenging your assumptions, sort of leave you with the feeling that you need to know quite a bit more about autism as well. And then there are 2 stories about Greta Thunberg and about how she became a climate activist. And it's basically the sort of takeaway from the stories is that she became an activist, not in spite of her autism, but because of it, and that it helped her. She says that it helped her. And also that something that a teacher said to her, which was about switching the lights off, but the teachers actually wanted her to switch the lights off. She wasn't sort of challenging her, but that was like quite a big catalyst for Greta to become involved. So that I think the message with that was that as a teacher, you might say something that you think is quite inconsequential, but it can have a massive effect on your students. What was the other thing? The impact on doing the task for us, I think, was basically to reflect on what we know and to realise that there's a lot more that we could know.
Thanks,
really.
Sally. Yeah,
but please teammates chip in.
Yeah,
No, I
that was a
really
great
like that takeaway at the end of realizing that there's so much more to learn and what you don't know. Sorry, Mason, I jumped in.
That was what I was saying. Great summary, Sally. And yeah, that's, I think it just, a lot of the things surprised us, and it was really interesting and made us just think how little we know.
Thanks. Okay, we have one more group, which I think is on understanding ADHD. So this was group 5, and yeah, the last group who hasn't shared. Quick summary from group 5 or group 10. I think it's just group 5. I think group 10 was nobody was in that group.
I'll give a quick summary.
Thanks.
At first, the introduction was about how people with ADHD are usually portrayed in the media. So there were 3 scenarios: one where they're heroes, one where they're victims, and one where they're villains. And the reflective question was about which one of them you agree with. And it's quite hard because they're all quite extreme. So it's hard to agree with any of them, but very interesting to think about. And then there's a case study, which was an interview with a 32-year-old who has ADHD. And I think the most interesting bit for me from that was that when this person was at school, one of their friends also had ADHD, but they didn't recognize that. They thought that they, what did they say? My friend just seemed unable to concentrate. He was impulsive, disorganized, but I thought there were completely different reasons. So the takeaway was kind of that, yeah, there's still a range, and it's about a group rather than individuals.
Great, thanks, Mary, for your reflections. Yeah, actually, thank you everybody for sharing. It's yeah, it's really nice to hear sort of what you've learned and the impact of going through those tasks. And I do recommend to go through the modules as you at your leisure, so you can access them either on the board, or we'll share some links after. I think we have one more activity now, so I'm going to hand back over to Joe to do a checkout for us. If you can pop back into the mural board, he'll be able to show you the next activity.
Great, thank you, Katie. Yeah, the next activity is an area that did have a grey cover on it, and it's now disappeared. So you should see, if you're back in the mural board on the right-hand side, item number 3, what's next? And there are a bunch of post-its there of different colours. Katie, I think, has summoned you all there if you're in mural. I think what we wanted to do, we've just got a few more minutes. In fact, to be honest, I wonder whether we don't have enough time to put this in the mural, but we could put it into the chat in Zoom instead. So I think what we hoped is that from working through the activities today, people would leave with something that you'd like to share with a colleague, or something that you'd be able to apply into your work in the rest of this week or next week. So if you could just spend a minute or so thinking about, either something that you'd really like to share with a colleague, a bit of information or some advice or a resource, or something that you were going to be able to apply in your work, and then just put it into the Zoom chat, and we'll see a few of those come in before we end the session in a couple of minutes. Great, thank you for sharing those. And I know there are a few more coming in, but I just want to draw your attention down finally to the very bottom of the mural board. Maybe Katie can summon us all there as well, where we have a link to a document of resources, which will now have the grey cover removed. So we've put together a Google document with resources, some of which we've talked about today, some of which are from the LearnJam team related to inclusivity in general. Also links to a couple of podcast episodes that we have done interviewing Martin. So some more information from Martin about special educational needs and specifically dyslexia in one of them. So hopefully those resources are useful to you, and maybe we can put the link in the chat as well for anybody who's not able to see the mural board. Laura, do you have that there? I can see a nod. So I'll wait for that to come in. There are the resources. Fantastic. So thank you again to all of you for spending your time, whether it's morning or afternoon or evening or night, with us today. We really appreciate it, and hopefully there have been some things that you can take away and can impact you in the work that you do. If you want to get hold of us, we can put our emails in the chat now as well. Also, maybe we can add that to the resources document if it's not there already. But yeah, if you've got any questions or any feedback, we'd love to hear it. And yeah, we hope that some of the things that we've discussed today can help make a real difference to learners wherever they may be on the neurodiversity spectrum, so that we can make their lives easier and happier as a result of our improved understanding. So yeah, thank you very much again. Have a lovely rest of your day, and hopefully we'll be in touch again at some point.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you. Brilliant.